Welcome to the Sipping with Sonia talk show. I am your host, Coach Sonia Renee, and I am so flat out excited to be with you today to share some great tips with you about why is dating so hard. So before we get started, let's take care of some housekeeping rules. Please like, follow, and hit that subscription button. And please share this content with other people that you know. And I hope that it will be riveting for you. I won't be before you long, but I will be before you strong. So I'm going to talk to you today about why relationships are hard. Now, I'm just going to give you 3 tips of why I think relationships are hard today. And of course, there are so many other reasons, but I'm just going to give you some of the top 3 tips as a professional coach, as a public speaker, as someone who has dated and been married, divorced, and dating again. I believe I've seen it all, right? So I'm going to give you a little bit of backdrop. I am a Gen X baby. I was born in 70. I'm 52 years old. And when I was coming up, dating was so different because we didn't have social media. You had to get in front of the person to have a conversation. There was no texting. There was no hiding behind the veil. No, you had to be open, you had to be honest, you had to communicate. People can feel your energy, your vibe. They'll listen for your tonality and how you're talking. And somebody really could show you the effort of how serious they were in getting to know you because they actually had to put effort into getting up, getting dressed, putting on a nice outfit, going out on a date, meeting your parents. I mean, it was a whole situation, right? Today, everything has been so watered down. It's been so disconnected, from online dating to meeting someone out and about. And people have relationships that they're already in. They're married. They're still looking for somebody else to talk to. And it's just a whole nuance of craziness going on, right? And it makes it really hard for genuine people who are looking for a genuine connection and really want to have someone that they can have a life built with, right? So the challenging part is sifting through all the nonsense, all the bad apples to get to that good apple. So I'm going to talk to you about a couple reasons why I believe that dating is so hard, which really it shouldn't be. But the reason why is because of these 3 things that I believe is the reason why. Just 3. Just remember that, just 3. Of course, there's more, but there's just these top 3. Number 1 is the mask. Oh yes, the mask. Because see, when you're getting to know someone, a lot of times that person is not being their authentic self. They're leading from a place of embarrassment or insecurities, or they're trying to become someone or be someone that they think you want them to be, or they're trying to be what they think you're looking for, instead of just be yourself. If you just be yourself, then the person that you're getting to know can get a chance to see for themselves if you're somebody that they want on their team. If you're somebody they want to continue to go forward with. I mean, at the end of the day, when you meet somebody, you don't know if you want them on a team. This is an interview process. You are interviewing that person to see if you want that person to be a part of your team. It's just like if you were applying for a job. You have to put in your best resume. You have to go in that job interview with your best outfit on, with your best attitude, ready to answer all the questions that come at you. You have to present yourself 100% like top tier, right? Why is it that when we go into trying to get to know someone, we forget that this is the same type of process? Now, I'm not saying be fake about it, but be your top tier self. Yes, be your top tier self, and be your top tier self all the time. See, if you're top tier, you're operating in your higher self at all times, then you don't have to worry about putting on a show for someone or a facade for someone or being fake. You can just be yourself, and then allow that person to get to know you organically. Allow it to go and grow where the energy flows, okay? Because when you try to put on a show or you try to be somebody that you're not, and that person is getting to know your mask, and then in 90 days, the real you shows up. Guys, listen. If it's me and I'm talking to you for 90 days and the mask comes off and the real you show up and I don't like the real you, I'm not going to give the real you another 3 months. I'm not doing that because you wasted 3 months of my time pretending to be somebody that you're not. Pretending to have the things that you don't have. A lot of times, and this goes for men, because I know that men feel like they have to have a certain amount of material things to acquire to feel as though they can determine what type of woman that they can have or get or entertain, if you will. And quite frankly, there are some basic things that they do need to have, of course, because as men being providers and protectors, yes, you do need to have your own place, your own, I don't care if it's a house, I don't care if it's an apartment, you just need to have your own home and a car and a job. If you're well able bodied to work, you need to have a job or some type of employment where you're gainfully employed and you can take care of yourself and the person that you are, pursuing, right? So, and when I say the person you are pursuing, I don't say up front you're taking care of them, but I mean in your mindset, you know that if you pursue that person to go long term, then you know that you're in a position to be a provider. Okay. So a lot of times, women, sometimes we don't really care too much about anything outside of the basic, because we know that when we come together with you, we can help you build anyway, because we just sprinkle our little magic over it. And guess what? Now all of a sudden your life that was good just became great. Right? Because anything you give a woman, she's going to multiply, right? So I just feel like, when people show up with the mask, they show up in the mask for different reasons. One of those reasons they show up in the mask is out of fear. Now, fear is, I've always taught this for years, that fear is false evidence appearing real. You probably heard it before. And at the end of the day, fear is what you have conjured up in your mind, because you have played the story in your mind. You starred the role in the movie. You rolled the credits, and the other person didn't even get to play that part. They didn't even get to play that part, because you took and you played that whole story in your head of how this thing is going to play out, and then you stopped. Or if you continued on, you just did not show up as your authentic self, because you doubted yourself. Well, 1 ounce of doubt and you're out. You doubted yourself. Excuse me, God. You doubted yourself that you weren't going to be good enough for that person. You started off wrong. So you led with fear. You led with your childhood trauma. You led with your relationship trauma, your relationship betrayal. And so those things that you found yourself sharing with this person, you shared what you chose to share to paint a picture of someone that is not completely you. Maybe a little bit of you, but not all of you. Now, let's talk about this trauma for a minute, because you have abandonment trauma, you got emotional trauma, there's childhood trauma, there's physical trauma, which is abuse. And so let's talk about that. Now, I am a life and relationship coach, and I help women recover and heal from abandonment trauma and relationship betrayal. And I see this all the time with my clients, of how they either they're meet men, or either the man is leading with fear, or either they're leading with fear, because what happens is you're scared that this person is going to hurt you like the last person did. And anytime that you meet someone and you already have your walls up, you're not ready to date. And the biggest issue is that people are out here dating and they're not ready to date. They're jumping in situationships and they're not even ready to do that, because they haven't had taken time to just sit in a season of self to deal with the traumas that are hurting you and holding you back. They haven't had time to deal with those emotional hangups. They haven't had time to deal with the mommy issues because your mommy wasn't there for you or your daddy wasn't there for you. They had no time to deal with that. And so they get involved with all these other people for all the wrong reasons, because they're always looking for the ghost of their father and the love of their mother. And so they lead with these traumas, and then they attract someone else who has those traumas. Now you have two people coming together with trauma bonds. Talk about a disaster waiting to happen. That is exactly what happens. When you have two people coming together and they both have trauma bonds, now they come together and they become codependent on one another. They become attached to one another. They are toxic with one another, and they tolerate so much that they just don't need to tolerate. Now, I do understand and know in the beginning of getting to know someone that oxytocin is dropping, that dopamine is dropping, and oh, he is just divine, and oh, she's so fine, and you're just so excited that you met somebody that you vibing with, you connecting with, you excited, you happy, you excited. But 90 days in, the real you, or the real her, the real him shows up. And then the other person is saying, wait a minute, this is not who I signed up for. This is not who I thought you were. You presented yourself to be something different. That's just like somebody, I love oatmeal cookies. I love oatmeal raisin cookies. It's crazy because growing up, I hated oatmeal. But it's amazing how when you get older, you change, your taste buds change, right? I was never big on chocolate chip cookies. Never big on chocolate chip cookies. But today, I like both. I like oatmeal raisin cookies and I like chocolate chip cookies. But when I go to the store and I want to buy some chocolate chip cookies, and you give me a box of oatmeal raisin cookies, and you give me a box of chocolate chip cookies, I'm going to be disappointed because I didn't get what I thought I was getting. Are you guys with me? Now, this is the Sipping with Sonya talk show, so I hope you pulled up and you sipping on something. I just had some water to touch up my throat, but I am sipping on my Cabernet. So come on, let me know what y'all sipping on. Y'all comment down below and let me know what y'all sipping on. Now, to get back to this abandonment trauma, a lot of us have grown up with abandonment trauma and we didn't even know it was trauma. Because in my era, we didn't have social media, but it was funny how it seemed like a lot of families were raised with the same rules, right? And because we seen our friends being raised in a different household, but with similar rules to the household that we came up with, we automatically assumed that this was the normal. We thought it was normal until we grew up and we started meeting people from different genres and backgrounds and cultures as we explore the world, and we realized, wait a minute, that was unhealthy. Because in my day, we weren't raised on love. We were raised on survival. Now, I'm not saying your parents didn't love you. I'm not saying my parents didn't love me, but they did. But their goal was to make sure that when you left the house, you came back home. Because see, we were latchkey kids. We were 6, 7 years old, walking to school, and after school we went to after school activities. And so our parents had to trust that when we left the house in the morning, that we made it to school and that we made it to our after school activities and that we were going to make it home by dinner time. They had to trust that we were going to make it home. And so now, I wouldn't do that with our children today. I mean, no, I wouldn't. I didn't even do it with my children, and they're all adults. I didn't, because times always, of course, change, but growing up in my day, it was a different time. And so, but even then, as a child, you were told, stay in a child's place. I'll tell you when you have feelings. I'll tell you when you can speak. So if you don't get a chance to express yourself, then you're always left to deal with your emotions by yourself. And then you become an adult like myself, and you grow up and you get married, and I'm going to voice my opinion. I'm a Philly girl, 2 and 5 all day, but I'm going to voice my opinion, right? But at the same time, you can still voice your opinion, but if the person that you're with does not know how to emotionally support you and comfort you, then you're still not getting what you need. You're not getting your emotional needs met, right? So it's still emotional abandonment. And so, and I wrote about this in my book. I wrote a book called Abandonment is Not Your Fault. And I'll put the link in the description below. But this is my book here. It's called Abandonment is Not Your Fault by myself, Sonya Renee. And in this book, I talk about my own personal journey of how I recovered and healed from my abandonment trauma that I didn't even know I had. Because again, I thought it was normal because I'm not needy. I'm not clingy. I don't have a problem doing things by myself. I take myself to dinner. I go to the spa. I do a lot by myself. I go out by myself. I travel by myself. So I have no problem being by myself. I'm okay with that, right? But there were things that I did have that I didn't realize that I had that was considered abandonment trauma. So I put it in the book, and I also put tips in there of how I processed it and how I recovered, how I healed, and how I came out on the other side better, where I can talk to you today with a smile on my face. Yeah, because I did the ugly cry, guys. Like, I'm telling you, when I tell you I was so distraught, I did the ugly cry, especially right before I wrote this book. Probably a year before I wrote this book, I found out that I was adopted. I know, right? I know. I found I was adopted. So that sent me on a rabbit hole journey of finding out who my birth family was and trying to find out what was going on back then, because my mom who raised me is deceased. She passed away when I was 28. And my father, he wasn't willing to give any answers, and neither was my aunt. I'm like, you the main two people, my mother's sister and my father, who my mother was married to. Y'all can't give me any answers here. Like, I'm not mad. I just want to know, like, what's the tea, but they wouldn't give me any answers. So, I went on the journey to find my birth family, and I did. It was amazing. And that's all in the book. It's in the book. So some stuff is in the book. So you just got to get the book. But the point of what I'm saying is that all led up to starting to realize some of the abandonment trauma that I had. And then also Spirit was telling me that the first time that I was abandoned was when my mother abandoned me when she gave me up for adoption. And then she abandoned me a second time when I tried to get to know her, and she wasn't open to that. She just wasn't open. So when we talk about that abandonment trauma, some people get into relationships with people and they become codependent because they have a fear, and they do more in that relationship than they should. They overextend themselves in the relationship. They give so much to the other person, and they're not getting much in return because they don't want that person to walk away from them. They don't want that person to leave them. So they're giving more. Or the flip side of that abandonment trauma is, well, if you do this, then I'm leaving. Well, if you do that, then I'm out. It's abandonment trauma, because I'm going to leave you before you leave me. I'm going to hurt you before you hurt me. When people have a trauma like that, they are not able to be in a healthy relationship. This is another reason why dating is so hard, because people are walking around with abandonment trauma, and a lot of people don't even know they have it. When I do my lives on social media, on TikTok and Facebook, where I talk to my coaching clients, and we start diving deep into the delta of what's really going on with them, a lot of it is abandonment trauma. They were abandoned by somebody in their life, parent, a sibling, a loved one, a significant other, a friend. They were abandoned by someone. Emotionally, physically, financially, they were abandoned. So they lead out of their trauma. They deal with people out of their trauma so they can control the situation, so they can protect their insecurities, so they can hide under the veil because they don't really want you to see them for who they really are. They don't want you to see the truth about them. Okay, so that's the second reason why I believe dating today is so hard, because people are dating when they haven't done the shadow work. They haven't been in a season of self where they had time to work on themselves, right? And then the third one is rules. Okay, so because you still have trauma, you haven't dealt with your trauma, men go from women to women to women, bleeding on people that didn't cut you, putting walls up with women who didn't even get a chance to get to your heart. And women, women sometimes do the same thing. But for the majority of women who've been hurt, they will go sit in their situation. They'll cry it out, have the girls come over, take a girls trip, try to work it out that way. They may start journaling and getting back to their purpose or whatever. And so they can move on. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they go from guy to guy too. Unfortunately, it's a vicious cycle, and it has to end. Right? And then the third thing is, like I said, is rules and consequences. So people come in with rules. Okay, if this person do this, I'm out. Let me see what she going to do. Or let me see what he's going to do. Well, that means you're already going in wrong, because you're already going in looking to see if the other shoe is going to drop. You're already going in thinking that something wrong is going to happen